Welcome to Pop Culture Retro, which was recently voted the 15th best podcast by the residents of Golden Years Retirement Community in Boca Raton, Florida. Each show will revisit some of your favorite pop culture memories with insider and outsider perspectives. Now, please help me welcome your hosts, Moosie Drier and Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Pop Culture Retro. Today, we are thrilled to welcome back to the show the author of Hollywood Haunted for a special Halloween episode. Please help us welcome Laurie Jacobson. Laurie, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, I'm glad you're thrilled. I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you for joining us, Laurie.
My pleasure.
So last time you were here, you touched upon your book, Hollywood Haunted. We discussed an encounter you had at the Chinese theater.
First, okay, so that's what started the whole thing. I mean, I had written a lot about Hollywood tragedies and untimely deaths and unsolved deaths, and there were
scandals.
Scandals. But there were always ghost stories attached to those kinds of stories, and I just sort of filed all that away, like as in my interesting file. And then we were getting a tour of Grauman's Chinese Theater. I worked with a historical society, and we were planning on giving a tour of Hollywood's grand movie palaces. It was a great tour, by the way. And Grauman's let us in early one morning to see where we would place our guides and give us a little inside information. And we experienced a ghost. We were in the main auditorium, and the guide, I was with about 5 other very stodgy male historians. And the guide said that in the 1920s, when the theater opened, there was a live stage show before the film, and that the stage held up to 200 actors. And now the movie screen is much, much bigger than it was back then. And would anyone like to go backstage behind the movie screen and check out the area? And I was the only one who wanted to. I thought, this opportunity is never going to come my way again. So there was a ladder up against, attached to the front of the stage, which was got to be 6 or 7, probably 7 feet high. And so you climb up this ladder, and then you're on your knees on the stage, and you stand up. And I'm walking around backstage thinking I'm going to find Judy Garland's initials on the wall and lipstick, and it was nothing, it was storage and light bulbs and toilet paper and nothing exciting. And I came back, and I awkwardly climbed down that ladder again, and I walked to my friends who were in the middle of the auditorium, and all of a sudden the guide says, "This place is so haunted." And without speaking, all of us turned back to the stage, and the floor to ceiling velvet drape was being grabbed by someone standing stage level. And although we could not see the spirit, I could see the handprints in the velvet, and that section of the drape was lifted up, and it was shaken very angrily.
Wow.
And I uttered the classic phrase, "Do you see what I see?" And everyone kind of went, "Uh-huh." And then I set a new land speed record running for the lobby, because I felt the anger so strongly. And it really was very scary. That was my first ghostly encounter. And I after talking to some of the other employees, I discovered that there was once an employee named Fritz, and we're not sure what years he worked there. But he took his life in the theater behind the movie screen.
Wow.
So when you decide to kill yourself in a public place, the place you choose is very significant to you. And he hanged himself back there. And he let me know very clearly that he did not like me going back there.
Well, just by what you said, that's what I wanted to ask you next. Right, the place you choose, whatever. In the book, you detail that there are different types of spirits. Like, some. Could you just give us like a little recap of what type of spirits they are for everyone watching?
Well, spirits were once humans walking the earth, and they come back for very different reasons. Some people return to a place that they love, and they wish to relive the happy moments that they spent there. With people who died untimely deaths, they are often seeking revenge or justice. And then there are very malevolent spirits. Fortunately, I've only encountered that once or twice, but I guess they're all, and apparently it takes a lot of energy to be seen, to appear. And it takes energy to move things. I've had weird smells and alarms set off, and I've worked with people who have had very dangerous, scary, being thrown against walls, ropes around their neck.
Wow.
Like terrifying experiences. I'm happy to say I've never had that happen. We didn't ask for the guy, for Fritz. We didn't even know Fritz was there.
So let me ask you. So there's a lot of really interesting and spooky things in your book. Love to go back and can we talk about Sharon Tate? Do you say that she foresaw her death?
Okay, so first of all, she passed in Benedict Canyon, and in Los Angeles, high above Beverly Hills, and the house where she was murdered is one of the highest points in that canyon, and all kinds of weird things and unexplained deaths and unsolved deaths have happened in Benedict Canyon. So I have this really creepy feeling about the whole canyon. And that is the highest spot. So I don't know if that, we just add up these little things. We don't know if it has, significance, but that's the fact. So Sharon's boyfriend before she married Roman was Jay Sebring, internationally known hairdresser, men's hairstylist. And he invented men's hairstyling. Before that there were barbershops. Then there was Jay Sebring. And he purchased a house in Benedict Canyon that Sharon would have been able to see from the house she and Roman had rented years later. Sebring's house he purchased for the history. It had belonged to Jean Harlow and her husband Paul Byrne, who was an MGM executive. And they had a really lousy marriage. He was a very odd man. And sexually, he was really disturbed, I think. And he married the greatest sex symbol in Hollywood at that time. And I think he was hoping that would straighten out his sex life, but it didn't. And it only taunted him. And so there was a lot of unhappiness in the house, and he ended up killing himself in that house, um, in a way that, well, really hurt Harlow. I mean, she was out and he waited until he heard her come back, and then he shot himself in their bedroom, naked in front of a full-length mirror. Very, very strange. So Sebring buys the house because of its history. He's out of town, and Sharon Tate is staying there. This is probably 2 to 3 years before she was murdered. And she is in the house, and she decides to go to bed, and in the bedroom walks the spirit of Paul Byrne. And she knew it was him because Sebring had photos of Byrne and Harlow throughout the house. So he doesn't see her. Sometimes they acknowledge what's in front of them. Sometimes they only see the place as it was. That's why spirits walk through walls, because those walls weren't there when they were living there. So he comes into the bedroom, he goes over to the desk, he's looking through papers as if he's looking for something, and she's terrified. She can't even move, and she has the covers, pulled up to her chin. And eventually he leaves the room and walks away down the hallway. And she is so frightened. She gets out of bed. She runs downstairs, and there on the stairs, she sees this horrifying specter of a person tied up with their throat slashed. And I'm not sure if she could tell whether it was a man or a woman, but pretty much that is how she died.
Okay.
And she managed to run past that. And by this point, she needed a strong drink. So she went into the room where Sebring had a bar that was hidden behind a panel in the wall. And she makes herself a drink, and she's trying to process what she has seen. And something tells her to pull at the wallpaper at the base of the bar. And she does that and tears it away. And there's this beautiful copper base that had been hidden behind the wallpaper. So now she's completely confused and frightened, and she goes back to the staircase, and the specter is still there. And she runs past it and runs back into the bedroom, locks the door, and somehow manages to fall asleep. In the morning, she thinks it was all some kind of weird dream, but she goes down to the room where the bar was, and the wallpaper was there torn away. So she knows she didn't dream it. She told several friends about this terrifying incident. And then 3 years later, when she was murdered, tied up with her throat slashed, people that knew the story were in disbelief.
Wow.
Well,
so the
same
thought
way,
is psychics and parapsychologists that I work with think that, when such an incredibly violent act takes place, that the energy, there's parallel universes and whatever you want to believe, but the energy from that incredibly violent act was already out there.
Wow.
I want to touch upon, because I think you did touch upon it. You're talking about the area there. So can we talk about the Castillo del Lago, the that house, the whole history of it?
Can I just
Yes.
interject for a second?
Yeah.
I should have said up front. I'm up very close to Benedict Canyon, so you guys are creeping me out. Hold on, let me make a.
Sorry.
Hold on, I just need a list. Put house on market. And just making a little note.
Good
Anyway,
luck with that.
okay, go ahead. Sorry, go on.
Now, Castillo del Lago, that's in Beechwood Canyon.
Okay.
Oh, good. Okay.
The canyons,
Right. Yes.
they got it going on.
Yeah.
What's the
That
history of that house?
Castillo del Lago,
Yeah.
that is a really weird and scary story. The house was built in the 30s, and there are rumors that it was either owned or rented for some time by Bugsy Siegel, gangster.
The gangster. Right.
Yeah.
And by the way, a very dear friend of Jean Harlow's. I'll just
Also.
throw that in. He made her the godmother to his daughters, and he carried a lock of her pubic hair in a locket that she had given him. Just thought I'd throw that in because I don't get to bring that up very often.
Yeah.
But so they say that Siegel gave parties there and entertained other gangsters and Hollywood types. And who knows when gangsters are involved, who knows the violence that happened in that house. There are rumors that it's high on a hill and very inaccessible. It's I think 7 stories, but only the top, I think 3 stories are a living area, and the bottom are like garage and storage. So it's very high on this hill and difficult to get to the living area. And they say that, other gangsters tried to get to Siegel coming up the hills. And anyway, something really weird and bad happened in that house. Now, cut to, I think it was the 80s when Madonna buys the house, and she paints these wild stripes on it, and the whole neighborhood goes crazy because it's, looks so out of place. And a friend of mine was a dancer in her act. And he stayed there when she was out of town. And he had the most frightening experiences there. And she also had a caretaker that stayed on the place. And he also heard his name being called in the middle of the night by a man. So now I'd be out of there in a flash. He would she had motion detector lights on the back patio, and they were all in a row, so if somebody was walking by, each of the lights would light up, and like the furthest away light would light up. Like you'd have to walk by the other 7 lights to get to the one furthest away, but that one would just light up by itself. And then he'd go out on the patio to see if some animal or something was out there, and the door would shut behind him and lock him out of the house. So something really didn't want people in the house. She had a very, very old Bible, I think it was, on a stand in one of the living areas. And one night the dancer was staying there, and he had a friend over for dinner, and they were looking through this room. She had a library in there, and she had a pretty incredible collection. And the dog came in and just started barking at this Bible on the stand. And then it started whimpering and backing away and crying. And they were overwhelmed with this malevolent feeling and, ran from the room. And went on and had dinner in another area of the house without any trouble. Basically when Madonna got pregnant, she moved out of there, which said a lot to me because she loved the house and she spent a lot of time making it her own. But when children were going to be living there, she left. Just before she moved in, the house was empty for quite some time, and there was a fashion shoot in the house, and the photographer said that every photo he took inside the house came out black.
Wow.
The lady in charge of all the clothing, the stylist, I guess, things disappeared. She'd put scissors down and turn back for them and they were gone. And the models, something just got darker and darker while they were there. And they couldn't be in the house. And when the shoot was finally over, the photographer told me they just we grabbed our frocks and we ran, and we never wanted to go back in that house. And he called the stylist. This is years later. He's telling me the story, and he called the stylist to see if she would tell me about her experience, and she did not want to discuss it. So something very, very dark. I mean, she wouldn't talk about it, but that to me was an acknowledgement that there was something dangerous there that she didn't.
Did she know ahead of time before she purchased the property? Did she know any history of this house?
I don't know that.
Okay.
I don't know, but I do know that if you believe your house is haunted, you have to disclose that when you're selling the house.
No kidding.
Yeah. So
I'll throw in a box of sage you can burn before you.
Somehow sage, I don't think it would have mattered.
Yeah.
Something in there, and so the gangster theory, survives there, I think.
Right. Is there any other LA famous LA places that are known to be haunted? I mean, I know there's Queen Mary.
Oh, so many. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
What's the most intriguing one to you?
Well, and speaking of the canyons, you mentioned the Hollymont house, which was I worked with parapsychologists who stayed there, and when it was empty, and it was the most dramatic occurrences there that this parapsychologist had ever had in his, at that time, 30-year career. And again, Beechwood Canyon, there were all kinds of things going on in that canyon.
Wow.
A lot of religious sects were up there, temples and I'm trying to think. Christopher Isherwood and Aldous Huxley went to chant in this one temple on Temple Hill Drive, and there's a convent. It was priests, now it's nuns, and long lines of chanting priests had been seen. What the ghosts of long lines of chanting priests seen walking up Benedict Canyon. Beechwood Canyon.
Beechwood.
And there is an apartment building. This is all within, a half a mile of each other. There was an apartment building still there that was a Theosophical Society of Great Britain, and they had seances there. And so I'm thinking, what is it? And then why were all of these places attracted to this very small area? I mean, Beechwood Canyon's pretty big, but all in this one area. And then right in the middle of it is the Hollymont house. So this man is living there, and he calls this parapsychologist, please come over here. These two houses they look identical and they're joined, but they're separate residences. And this man was living in one of the residences, and literally things are flying through the air. It's insane. So this parapsychologist, Barry Taff, walks into the house, and it's going nuts. This woman is there, and a chair flies across the room, pins the woman to the wall. A pitcher travels through the air and pours water on her. Someone says, I'm hungry, and a bunch of bananas flies out of the kitchen through the living room and drops at this guy's feet. A telephone lifts up and flies across the room, just missing Barry Taff. They had a priest come in to bless the house, and his hat immediately disappeared off of his head, and they find it on an inaccessible portion of the roof of the house. Spontaneous fires broke out in waste baskets. I mean, it was insane. They had a television crew come in to try and shoot this activity. Every time they plugged their equipment in, that plug went dead.
That's what I read.
The street light, only the one in front of the house went out, while all the rest on the street were still lit up. So Barry Taff said, so the guy is in the process of moving out. And Barry Taff says, I'd like to stay here before the new owners come in. So he stays there for 9 days. And during that time, he'd be in bed, and the very distinctly feminine spirit opened the door to the bedroom and climbed in bed with Barry and spooned him from behind. He wasn't afraid of that, but because she was very gentle and apparently was seeking male companionship, which I believe was why she pinned that lady to the wall and poured water on her. I don't think she liked ladies in the house. He talked to the neighbor in the house next door and discovered that a lot of the same things were happening in his house as well. And he said, there's a tunnel under my house that connects the two houses. And they explored that tunnel, and inside the tunnel they found the grave of a woman. And it just had her first name on it, and it was a cemented area, a cemented grave. I mean, it wasn't like someone was trying to hide a body.
Right,
well, they were hiding it, but yet they marked it. So, it was a year before the house was built, was the date of the death. So we thought maybe one of those monks or priests, something happened, got a girl pregnant. We don't know. We're only theorizing who would
Wow.
have tried to hide this grave in a tunnel and yet need to mark it? It was all so odd. So years later, we go back, we get access to the house, and I'm there. And once again, I'm the only girl amidst all these male ghost hunters who had all their equipment and they're running from upstairs to downstairs. And I'm alone upstairs. I come up the stairs and I'm in the main hallway upstairs, and I have a very distinct feeling of a spirit. And all the bedrooms are upstairs. And the man who owned the house at that time was in the women's clothing business. And he had photos, big blow-ups of women in the clothes that he sold. And he had one in each of the bedrooms. And I felt nothing in those bedrooms. There was only one bedroom where he didn't have a picture of a woman. And that bedroom, I had the overwhelming sensation of a spirit. And I looked up, and the chandelier was oscillating. It wasn't swinging back and forth. It was moving in a way that somebody had to set it moving in a circle. So I call all the boys with all their equipment and they come running in and they start taking pictures, and orbs are showing up in the photos. And everybody was all excited about it. And then I brought in a picture of a woman, and it all stopped. So it's a woman in that house, and she doesn't like other women.
So relationships remain complicated in the afterlife? Oh, God. Yeah. Great.
I mean, books flying off of shelves.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
it was insane in there. So
yeah, you know what? It takes only one of those things for me to be in the car and heading in any other direction.
Well, you mentioned at the beginning that you said that you've not, this kind of sounds malevolent to me, though, but you said you've not experienced really malevolent spirits, but you know people who have. Could you go expand on that? Anything that you could share?
Oh, it's Barry Taff, Dr. Taff. Yeah, there was a haunting in Long Beach that a film was based on it, and now The Entity.
The Entity, yeah.
Where a woman is violently attacked. It's based on this experience. A woman was living in a house in Long Beach with her two sons, and she was being physically attacked by a spirit. I mean, hit, sexually abused. It was horrific. And so they came to investigate. Barry and another photographer who was shooting in the house, videoing in the house. And sometimes these things can follow you. The videographer went home and felt that something followed him home, and took him quite some time to get that negativity out of his house. But they kind of thought that the sons of this woman disliked her intensely, and that it could possibly have been their incredibly negative energy that was attacking her. Because when she moved out of the house with her sons, whatever it was, followed her. But they did investigate the house. They went into the attic. One of the men went into the attic with a camera, and the only light in the attic was when he hit the flash on the camera, and he saw a man in the attic. And then they heard their friend screaming in the attic, and they went climbing the ladder up there, and a noose had been put around his neck, and he was hanging from a beam in the attic. So they had to literally save his life. Wow. They had a kind of a seance after that, sitting around a table, and that same man was thrown out of the chair and back into a wall. And you know, he never went back there, and he had some intensive therapy after that because he was absolutely terrified. So I mean, they took a photo of him with the noose around his neck, and you could. So it was bad. It was very, very bad.
Yeah, I want out. I don't want any of that in my life.
And let me just say, you know, there are many places that are filled with spirits who return for very happy reasons, like the Hollywood Palace, which is now called something else. I always forget the name, but on Vine.
Yeah. It's called, it doesn't matter what it is now, but it was the Palace forever. That's really, and most people still just call it the Palace anyway.
Yeah.
So I got a question. So what about like Hollywood studios or movie sets? What about supernatural stories that have happened in direct relation to like certain sound stages and sets?
Oh yeah, and all the studios have something going on.
I've always heard that. Yeah.
Which is, and some of them I find very romantic and lovely. Like, you know, back in the day, you held your job for 40 years at a studio. If you were a guard at the gate, you knew everybody. Everybody knew you. You worked there for 40 years. You met your wife there. When your kids were ready to work, you brought them into the studio. It was a very family place, and there was a great deal of loyalty from the employees at that time. So these guards would stroll the lot at night, making sure everything was locked up tight. And people still see them in the middle of the night on their nightly walks, protecting the studio. They see at Raleigh Studios, they've seen the spirit of a woman running, going to work. Stage 5 at Raleigh Studios, there's something in there that has set 300-pound lights hanging from the ceiling, that has set them, you know, wildly swinging, footsteps. They believe that a lighting guy fell from the catwalks in the 30s, and he is the spirit that haunts Stage 5. And again, I brought Barry Taff and a couple of other psychics in there, and the minute they walked in, they fell. They felt what's wrong with the floor? It's tilted. But one of Barry's gifts is physically feeling what happened in a place, and he fell. So and there was one studio, I love this story. It was called Pacific Studio, and it's gone now, torn down. But there was it was used in silent films, and on the stage, in the main stage, they constantly heard a knocking under the stage. When they were shooting silent films, it didn't matter. But when talkies came in, it was very disruptive. And so finally, they decided to dismantle this raised stage, and they found the body of a man under there. And see, he just wanted a proper burial. I don't know. We don't know how he got there, whether he was there before the stage was built or after. But he just wanted people to acknowledge that he was there and give him his proper due. So after they discovered him and they removed his remains, all the noise stopped. And one of the last owners of the studio was walking through the main stage at night and just locking up the place, and it was dark. And out of peripheral vision, he saw a light. And he turned to where the main stage had been, and he saw an old silent screen scene going on. A cameraman with one of the cameras that used to wind, and a director with a megaphone, and actors on the stage. And I just love that, that they're still going to work. And it was a beautiful memory. I love that. And also Thomas Ince's studio, Culver Studios, when they were doing, he loved that studio. He died young and under mysterious circumstances. And the studio changed hands many times. He had a glass studio, a glass soundstage, so they could use all the natural light. And and they were, there was no need for that in later years, so they were tearing that down. And the construction workers saw him walk up. He walked right up to them and said, "I don't like what you're doing to my studio." And then he walked away and disappeared through a wall.
With the cameraman who kept going in to work, the show must go on, regardless of death or not. Right.
Oh, and yeah. I mean, listen, I don't rule anything out, because who am I to say, but I've heard the Raleigh stage 5, I think you said.
Yeah.
I've heard that forever. Any of these stories that didn't make the book that come to mind that you think, oh, that's probably worthy also of being
well, here's the thing about the book. When it came out, when it was first published in I want to say 94, my publishers cut 100 pages from the book, not for the content, but for space.
Yes.
It would have been a more expensive book for them to publish.
Right.
But no less worthy. These stories that didn't make it in, no less worthy, I'm sure. So
but they cut some of all my babies.
Right.
That's the worst expression in Hollywood is killing your babies. That's what our writers have to do, is because everything they put in is something they obviously were passionate about. But sometimes you gotta pick something. It's Sophie's choice of writers.
So they had the book in print for like 19 years. And then they stopped printing it. It was only available as an ebook. And it just languished for 9 years, and they wouldn't give it back to me. And I finally discovered a loophole in my contract, and I got the rights back to my book, and just 2 years ago. So I'm very thrilled about that. And thank you. And I reprinted it, and I added back all the stories that they took out. So if you're looking to purchase my book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or wherever you buy books, make sure, let's see, that it says up here, author's cut. Because that is
that's the one.
Some of the older versions are out there. But the one that says author's cut is now 100 pages longer than the other.
Oh, well, good. Version. I'm glad I asked then. Those are the.
I got to say, I love the book. I think it's such a fascinating book. I really enjoyed going through. That's why I said, like, oh, Halloween's coming up. I got to ask Laurie to come back and talk about this. So this is
Yeah.
really a fun book. Last time you were here, we were talking about your great book about the Beatles, Top of the Mountain, the Beatles at Shea Stadium. So what are you working on next?
I am working on a book that is the history of the Sunset Strip.
Oh, cool.
From the
Very
teens to the 2000s. And, pretty much whatever happened on the Strip happened to the rest of the world, whether it was comedy or rock and roll or Martin and Lewis or fashion or, whatever was going on the Strip became worldwide. It was just that, and I just love the stories of the Strip.
Oh, what a great subject. Yeah.
You mentioned scandals, the Hollywood scandals that I
Another
wrote
great book
about.
of yours, yes.
There were three enormous scandals in the very early 20s, and it sent those three scandals were the catalyst for tabloid journalism, and actors and people in the industry were then besieged by now disloyal employees that were getting paid by tabloids to tell all of their famous employers, and the LAPD was had been shown to be terribly inept during these scandals, and so now they were after somebody. They wanted something big to restore their reputation. And so the industry people fled Los Angeles and moved to Beverly Hills, which was not part of Los Angeles, and it had its own police force. And Will Rogers was the honorary mayor, and nobody was there except Doug Fairbanks and Mary Pickford, and they said, come on out, So everyone moved there, and where the local police, the Beverly Hills police, were easily bribed with a ticket to a premiere, or if they stopped Charlie Chaplin driving drunk, they offered him an escort home rather than calling the tabloids. So it became a very safe haven for them. And when they went to work, the only way to get to work was the Sunset Strip, which was also not part of Los Angeles. It was the little township of Sherman, and they had a little sheriff's department that where a wink and a bribe went a long way.
Sure.
So when they're driving back and forth on the Strip, the people who owned property on the Strip realized the wealthiest people in town are driving up and down my street. I'm going to open a restaurant. I'm going to open a drive-in restaurant. I'm going to open a nightclub with entertainment. Oh, now it's prohibition. I'm still opening a nightclub with alcohol, and now gambling. That's where Bugsy met Jean Harlow, at one of those gambling establishments. So, and Mickey Cohn, another gangster, set up shop on Sunset Strip. So everything happened there. So it was very exciting, and I can't wait to reveal all.
When the book comes out, we'll have to have you back to discuss it.
Oh, great. Thank you. I have been collecting stories, and my partner, Mark Wanamaker, who has one of the greatest film archives and photo archives it's a world-class collection. We have been wanting to do this book for like 40 years. And now that the Strip is in a bit of a decline, now's the time.
Yeah, to bring back and remind us of the glory and the mystique
glory
and glamour.
days,
Yeah. I believe anything you say. So I'm like hanging
Oh,
on every word, you know? So, wow, thank
Well,
you.
I'm 35.
so
Okay.
again, how can people follow you on social media?
Yeah.
I'm out there. LaurieJacobson.com is my website, and you can write me there. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and I'm not very active on X
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's you can easily contact me if you want signed copies of any of my books. Just write me on Facebook or at lauriejacobson.com, and I can make that happen for you.
Thank you so much.
Spooky night.
I'm gonna get out of Benedict Canyon and
So, Laurie, thank you again. So
thank you,
again, this has
thank
been
you.
Pop Culture Retro. I'm Jonathan Rosen with Moosie Drier. And again,
Lucy.
yes, a very special thanks to Laurie Jacobson. And please like, comment, and subscribe.
Thank you for tuning in to Pop Culture Retro, where no one was hurt during the making of this podcast. Listening to this podcast just makes you really cool.